Thank you.
I'm Gautam Mukunda. Tonight on Greater Boston, Worcester's interim police chief is acknowledging his department has harmed communities of color after a city report found huge racial disparities in arrests. How can Worcester right those wrongs? Plus, one of the more exciting astronomical phenomena is happening here Monday in the U.S. GBH's Edgar B. Herwick III is here to share some curious facts about total solar eclipses. And finally, from music critic to rocking the stage in her own right, former Boston Globe columnist Joan Anderman shares her story from the stage. How can Worcester right the wrongs of systemic racism in its police department? After an equity audit revealed wide racial disparities in arrests and hiring, Interim Chief Paul Saucier is acknowledging the harm Worcester police have done.
Historically, there have been police practices that have been negative to communities of color. We recognize that.
The audit, commissioned by the city, also laid out a series of recommendations for the WPD, which is also currently under investigation by the Department of Justice. To discuss, I'm joined by GBH News Worcester Bureau reporter Sam Turkin and Worcester City Council Christian King. Sam, Christian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Sam, let's start off by giving us the headlines on what this report is telling us about how bad the situation is.
Yeah, so this audit report, this equity audit report, was a long time in the making, about 3 years now, and it recommended everything from the establishment of a citizen oversight board to better officer training to more accountability. And some of the main findings included the fact that people of color, people who are Latino, people who are Black, are arrested at disproportionate rates compared to white residents.
So to put some numbers on that, the white population of the city is 52%, but the arrest rate is 41%, whereas the Black population of the city is 12%, but the arrest rate is 21%.
Right, and another main finding was the fact that although arrests in general have gone down, youth, children, kids under age 18 are arrested at high rates. So that was a surprising takeaway. And then there was some issues with data regarding how police force, and whether they're recording that data. The report found, the auditors found that the police department is not publicly or not recording that data in a way that is easily accessible.
Christian, when you saw those numbers, what was your response?
We know that policing can be advanced and enhanced here in the city of Worcester. I was part of a coalition that met with the mayor and the past city manager in establishing this equity audit. We really wanted to delve into policy, procedure, and what the impact that has on community. And, that's exactly what we have here. We have a number of actionable items that we can put in place to improve oversight, and also to take a real hard look at how we're collecting data. One of the things that were revealed is that we're not collecting data on race and age and things of that nature to the degree to which we should. And as we have discussed in the past, there is a bit of a gap, a trust gap between the community and law enforcement in some instances. And the better we can do providing data and being transparent, the more able we are to close that gap.
So, Christian, how has the police force responded to your initiatives on this?
I'm sorry?
How has the police force responded to this initiative?
We have a new chief of police in place, acting chief, Paul Saucier, and acting chief Saucier has been engaging. The past chief was not willing to acknowledge any systemic racism. And I think, what we're going to see is some policy changes, some practice changes internally, because in order to do better as a city and as our law enforcement division, we have to start from the outside in. The audit additionally, revealed that police officers themselves have questions about equitable opportunities for advancement. They have questions themselves about unfair discipline that's influenced by who you know and politics. And if you don't have a level of trust inside of the department to the degree that we should, then that also can trickle out into the community. And I'm really looking forward to rolling up our sleeves. We have a municipal operations committee that should be providing oversight for this. And we're currently in the process of attempting to onboard a diversity officer and staff to have proper oversight over this.
Sam?
And regarding the acknowledgement, you played that clip earlier on where the interim chief, the acting chief, acknowledges past wrongdoing in communities of color. The reason why that was so big is, as the counselor said, the previous chief wasn't willing to do that. And that was despite, in 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice launching an investigation into the Worcester Police Department for excessive use of force and discriminatory policing based on race and sex. And through my sources, a lot of people just felt that despite that investigation, despite news reports of more lawsuits being filed against the police department and more settlements for falsifying police arrests and excessive use of force, they felt like there was no change. And there was nothing new coming out of the police department that signaled that these concerns were being taken seriously. Now the interim chief finally makes this statement. And I've already spoken to a couple of people who were like, wow, this is a difference. This is huge. Now, obviously, it's just words. Let's see how things actually turn out. But just that statement in and of itself, as the counselor said during that meeting in response, like that was big for the city of Worcester.
So what are the key recommendations for the changes that the police force should implement?
Well, as the audit report mentioned, it was everything from diversifying the police department. There have been efforts to diversify. They haven't been as successful as the auditors clearly would have liked.
So as we can see from the Worcester Police Department employees by race from 2017 to 2021, although it's not a homogenous force, it's substantially overrepresented among whites and underrepresented for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that was right. That's what the report pointed out. And then one thing that the city already has moved on, and the counselor was involved in this vote, was getting rid of the civil service requirement for police chief and deputy chief. Now, that's a move that a lot of other departments around Massachusetts have made because they felt like it wasn't allowing them to hire the officers that they want, because as part of the requirement, your officers need to take this exam and score high enough for them to be considered. It prevents officers, for example, from out of state, chiefs from out of state, from applying for positions like this. So the report recommended getting rid of this requirement to actually open up the procedure a little bit, open up the process. And that was a vote that, as I said, the counselor was involved in. And so that was the one initial step they've already taken. And now the report is going back to the city manager for some further community engagement and community meetings about how the public feels about this process. It'll come back to the city manager where he and the city councilor will meet and discuss this issue further and provide more recommendations to the police department for how they all can move forward.
Counselor, what is the first few changes that you'd like to see implemented?
No, we really need a culture shift internally. When you look at, when Acting Chief Saucier made the statement about the impact on communities of color of some of the policing in the past, it was in response to my question that I was asking about the fact that in this report, you have the community stating they had real concerns about policing in many aspects. On the other hand, you had the majority of the respondents saying that there is no issue between law enforcement in terms of trust or patterns of practice in the community. And I asked him, how does he reconcile that? And that's the first challenge. And it starts from the top, starts from leadership. It starts from really taking a look at data. We need to integrate a system that's easily navigable and also a system that's transparent and available online for folks to take a look at. Those are some of the initial things. And in terms of low-hanging fruit, one of the things recommended was very simply with respect to their internal trainings and in respect to their diversity, equity, inclusion planning, that it must be stated along in their recruitment strategies as well, their commitment to diversifying the workforce, their commitment to equity and inclusion, and that it must be stated in policy for everyone to see, so that we're setting a standard in that department that, yes, this is important. These are issues that must be challenged, and it will make for a better police department.
And Interim Chief Saucier, at the end of his comments, in response to this difference between how the officers feel and how the community feels, he said, look, we're willing to do whatever it takes to address these issues.
Well, Sam Turkin, Christian King, this is obviously an issue that we're going to be facing and hearing a lot more about, and we are hoping that the community really can repair the trust that you're talking about, Christian. Sam, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next up, unless you've been living under a rock or in a cave, hidden away from the sun, you know that this Monday is a big day here in North America. That's because, well, the sun will be hiding from us for a few minutes. The 2024 solar eclipse is just around the corner, a total eclipse in some parts of New England. Here to get curious with us about it is Edgar B. Herwick III, the guy behind GBH's Curiosity Desk.
Hello.
Hi, Edgar. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Are you into this? Are you really excited about this eclipse?
I could not be more excited about this. I grew up in the space business, so anything involving astronomy, anything like that is my jam.
Pretty fantastic. Yeah, so again, just, as a reminder, this is Monday. It's going to happen, around 2 to 4:30-ish. And here in the greater Boston area, people are going to be at like 90 to 92% totality or something like that. So most of it's going to get covered. But just north of us, there will be a full total solar eclipse. Lots of cities on it too, right? Like San Antonio, Dallas, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and then of course places in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine.
So this is pretty rare. When is the next total eclipse hitting the United States?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because I've worked up a little bit of trivia here, and I thought this is going to be fun, because what I'm thinking is this is eclipse related, but it's not really necessarily the science of it. This is, I'm thinking, people, while the eclipse is happening, they can kind of pull this trivia out on their friends and stuff.
Okay.
And I thought maybe if you would like to be the guinea pig and like sort of go through it with me.
Always.
Great. So you asked, first question is it true or false? We're going to do all true or false today, all right? So true or false, another full solar eclipse will occur in 2079 with Boston proper in the path of totality this time.
Oh, wow. So the next one in the United States is 2044, but I don't know anything about 2079. So I will guess true, because it's such a strange year to pick.
It is absolutely true. And it's interesting because, people talk about a full solar eclipse as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? But for younger Bostonians, many of them will be around in 2079. And in fact, if you're willing to move from place to place, total solar eclipses are not that uncommon. There's a bunch of them coming up if you're willing to go to different places. We just see a list right here. We got one in 2026, 2027, 2028, 2030, 2033, 2034. None of them in the U.S., or I think most of them not in the U.S. I think Alaska will get a part of one. But other places in the world, if you want to see one, you can do it in your lifetime.
Awesome.
All right, want to do another one?
Absolutely.
All right, number 2, true or false? This one's going to have to do with the moon. There is always a full moon on the evening of a total eclipse. Is that true or false? Always a full moon on the evening of a total solar eclipse.
Well, the evening makes me feel like you're tricking me, but it has to be a full moon for an eclipse. So I'm going to say yes.
So that would be, no, it is false. It's the exact opposite. So it's always a new moon.
A new moon.
The first phase of the moon is the new moon, and so it's always a new moon when you've had an eclipse. That's just sort of like where it is in its phase. So
it's always a full moon for a lunar eclipse.
That is probably
what it is,
true.
yeah.
That is probably true. So there you go.
Okay.
All right, number 3. Want to do another one? Here we go. Staying on moons, but this time we're going to kind of move away from the Earth. So, true or false? On Mars, full solar eclipses are much more common than here on Earth because Mars has 2 moons.
So Mars does have 2 moons, but Phobos and Deimos are really small.
Phobos and Deimos.
So I'm going to go with no, because I don't think they're big enough to block out the sun.
You have nailed it 100% across the board. You're right on the names of the 2 moons, which of course are named after 2 Greek twin god characters, both different kinds of fear, right? One of them is like terror and the other one is like panic or something like that. They are both very small moons. And so while there are a lot of eclipses that happen, they are always partial because the moons are not big enough to actually cover the sun relative to somebody who would theoretically be standing on the surface of Mars. Now, apparently the big event on Mars, the big like sort of this barely ever happens kind of eclipse, is when one of those moons eclipses the other moon. So that apparently is a very rare occurrence, but that does happen.
Well, someday somebody will get to see that.
Yeah, I mean, you would, hopefully, fingers crossed we can get to Mars someday for something like that. All right, you got one more in you?
Absolutely.
All right, we're sort of going to shift out of science and into arts and culture in this one. Okay, so true or false? Are you familiar with the 1983 Bonnie Tyler hit, Total Eclipse of the Heart?
I mean, I've heard it.
Very famous song, very famous song. So your true or false question is, that 1983 Bonnie Tyler hit single, Total Eclipse of the Heart, was written by the same songwriter behind I Would Do Anything for Love by Meatloaf and It's All Coming Back to Me Now by Celine Dion. So true or false, the same songwriter wrote all 3 of those tunes.
I mean, they all have kind of the same style.
Don't they?
So I will go with true.
It is absolutely true, and the songwriter is a songwriter named Jim Steinman, and there's a little bit of a local story here because he went to Amherst College. So that's where he got his bachelor's degree in 1969. And apparently, like essentially his senior project, what he got a bunch of his like credit for in his senior year, was writing a musical. And this musical was called, it was called Dream Engine. And it's like a dystopian 1969 or whatever. But there's a song in that musical which is called Formation of the Tribe. And that is where the line, Turn Around Bright Eyes, originates. So that famous line as part of the song Total Eclipse of the Heart, Turn Around Bright Eyes, stretches all the way back to a different song he wrote in 1969 in a play at Amherst College.
And so where are you going to see this eclipse, Edgar?
So I'm going to be covering this for GBH for the Culture Show. If people check that out on the radio, I'm going to be in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, which is in the path of totality. Small town about 3 hours outside of Boston, but they punch above their weight with cultural institutions, including a science museum. So they got a big sort of program prepared, and they're expecting anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people to come into this small town and be there for the event. I will be among them, and we'll be doing some reporting from up there.
Well, Edgar, I'm really jealous because that sounds amazing, and I
very excited.
Look forward to hearing in person from you all about what it was like when the skies go dark in the middle of the day.
I will give you the full report.
Thanks very much, Edgar B. Herwick III. Thank you for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
It's never too late to change your life, and former longtime Boston Globe music critic Joan Anderman learned that when she put down her pen and picked up a mic. She shared her experience in chasing her musical dreams with stories from the stage. And we bring you that now as a partnership between that show and this one.
It's a warm summer night in 2009, and I'm ending it the same way I've ended countless, and I mean countless summer nights. Hunched over a folding table in a trailer parked in the bowels of an amphitheater outside of Boston, tapping on my laptop and nervously eyeing the clock. There's a closed-circuit TV on in the corner, and the sound of steel drums is pouring out of it. The opening bars of Margaritaville. I'm searching my online thesaurus for synonyms for breezy. Sunny, lay back, feel good, lighthearted. I am, of course, writing a review of a Jimmy Buffett concert. It's his 50th at this venue. I can't remember how many of them I've covered, 4, 5, 6. It feels like I've been to all 50, though. Coincidentally, I am about to turn 50. A numerologist would say that this was no coincidence, that 50 represents change and growth and personal freedom, and that all of these 50s were a harbinger of the sea change that was about to upend my life. All I know is something is shifting inside of me. I've loved being a rock critic for a long time. It's an incredible job with ridiculous perks. I've meditated with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I've eaten tacos with Lucinda Williams, and I've curled up on a sofa with Madonna. But this night, my eye keeps landing on the antonyms for breezy. Anxious, troubled, vexed. There's something wrong, something is changing, and I don't know what it is. All I know is something is missing. Not long after the Buffett concert, I'm on the phone with my daughter, Hannah, who's a student at Barnard College in New York. And she's telling me that she's thinking about taking some time away from school. She's burnt out and she needs a change. And during one of our conversations under the auspices of brainstorming, her year off becomes our year off. We are so totally pumped about this idea. And we start making a list. We can start a small arts festival. We can become cheesemakers. We can build a cabin. We can write songs and make a record. Hannah ultimately decides to stay in school, but that last idea, write songs and make a record, I can't get it out of my head. When I was young, I dreamed about becoming a musician. I grew up in LA in the 1970s, and I went to an artsy high school. I loved to sing. I was crazy about pop music. My big fantasy was that Donald Fagen from Steely Dan would discover me. Even though I didn't actually play music, he would somehow sense how musical I was. And he would offer to produce my debut record. Then Steely Dan would take me on the road, and you know the story, I become a star. That didn't happen. But I did land an internship at the Seattle Weekly after college, and they gave me a shot writing about music. I've never looked back. I'm certainly not filled with regret over my choices. I am, however, growing older, and as I do, certain things are becoming clearer to me. For instance, the fact that I'm going to die. I don't just know this, I feel it. I feel my mortality. I felt it that night in the suburban amphitheater, searching for new language. And the feeling was even stronger a few months later when I was talking with my daughter about a mother-daughter music project. So when my 50th birthday rolls around, I'm still doing my job, I'm going to shows, I'm filing my stories, but I no longer feel like the luckiest writer in the world. I feel like a kid with her nose pressed up against the glass. Frustrated and full of desire. I suppose I could have signed up for guitar lessons, but instead I walk into my editor's office one morning and I quit my job to become a songwriter. Okay, it wasn't quite that impetuous. I agonized for months. I was worried about losing the steady paycheck. I was worried about losing my identity. Who would I be if I wasn't Joan Anderman from the Boston Globe? And what would people think about a middle-aged woman chasing a rock and roll dream? But I was done. I was done being on the outside looking in. For my going away present, the newspaper gave me a microphone, and I packed it in a box with a mountain of reporters' notebooks, and I went home. I spent the next 2 years hiding in my attic with a borrowed guitar and an amplifier that one of my kids' friends left at the house, trying to play bar chords and hoping against hope that all the listening and thinking and writing that I've done about music counts towards my 10,000 hours. I start posting pictures on Facebook of my fingers in various shapes on the guitar neck, waiting for my friends to weigh in and tell me what I'm playing. Radical transparency felt like the only way I could deal with the self-doubt and the self-consciousness. So I start a blog, as one does, and I start posting audio clips of my cringeworthy baby steps. I'm not being self-deprecating. I am a trained professional. This was really, it was bad stuff. But I kept going, and I kept digging, and I kept working very hard to silence the critic inside of me, because I knew that that was the only way I could find the songwriter inside of me. One of my faithful readers, his name is Dan. He was a former colleague of mine from the Boston Globe. He starts leaving really encouraging comments on my blog. And he sends me some of his own songs too, and I love them. Dan invites me to get together with him to play music, and I graciously declined. I had no intention of leaving that attic for a long, long time. It was too loaded, it was too scary, I wasn't at all ready. But Dan was tenacious, and I was getting very sick of myself. I know better than anyone that, I know as well as anyone, not better than anyone, but as well as anyone, that songs don't exist in a vacuum. Songs belong in the world. So Dan was tenacious, and I finally came out of my attic, and we got together, and we started playing our songs. And the next thing you know, we formed a band, and we are on a tiny stage playing our first show in a dark rock club. Everybody I know is there, and as predicted, it's very loaded, and it's very scary. And it's also the most thrilling and joyful thing I've ever done in my life. So, maybe middle age seems like a strange time to kick off a music career, but in my experience, it's actually the perfect time. I don't have stars in my eyes. I'm not trying to make it, not in any conventional sense. Although I will say that reading a review in the Boston Globe of my band Field Day was fabulously surreal. The best part of this whole endeavor, really the mission critical part of it, is that at my age, I'm far less concerned with what the world expects of me than what I plan to do, in the words of the poet Mary Oliver, with my one wild and precious life. Thank you.
You can catch more Stories from the Stage Mondays at 9:30 p.m. on World and Fridays at 8 here on GBH2, or anytime on the Stories from the Stage Facebook page and YouTube channel. And next week, you can catch some stories in person at the Stories from the Stage Into the Wild event. For tickets and more info, head to gbh.org/events. And we have a limited number of free tickets for Greater Boston viewers. Use code Greater Boston in all caps and with no space. That's it for tonight, but come back tomorrow. The new leaders of the state's probation and parole offices say they want to change how their departments operate. One of those leaders will join me to discuss the impact he hopes to have. And what do long COVID and chronic Lyme disease have in common? One MIT immunoengineer says a lot. She'll be here to explain why the link is important and what it means for our health. Tomorrow at 7, thanks for watching. I'm Gautam Mukunda, and good night.